Brandy, what is a food forest and what does it mean for permaculture?
So a food forest is working with the tendency of nature in our particular bioregion to move toward forest. So it's working with the momentum that is already inherent in our natural systems here. So instead of keeping things at a level of disturbance, which is what tilling type of agriculture does, where every time a crop comes, you till it, you cut it back, you till it under, kind of start from the beginning every single time. So rather than constantly starting from the beginning, a food forest looks to integrate in a no-tilling type of system, overstory fruit and nut production, berries and shrubs, vines, annual vegetables kind of intercrop within. This particular food forest is designed along the lines of something called alley cropping system. So we've got, you can kind of see in the background these swales here. So they're contoured, meaning that every point within the along the berm of that swale is at the same altitude, essentially, or elevation. Along the berms of the swales, or just on the downhill side of the berms of the swales, will be the fruit trees and berry bushes, some nut trees, things like hazelnut and beach plum and mulberry and pawpaw and cornelian cherry and figs and plums and all these wonderful, delicious fruits. And so they'll form the overstory, and then there's about a 9-foot to 10-foot strip between. On this one, it's a little larger, between the edge of the southern edge of the barn and the top of the swale here. There's about 23 feet to that, 25 to that, sorry. And so these are designed with ample space for turnaround for the client to be able to have the fruit and nut production, and then have in between. Why it's called alley cropping is because you're basically, your paths in between, you can do larger row crops. So things like corn and potatoes and squash, things that you might end up turning under, but it's turned under within a larger no-till system.
So it's not for equipment, it's for, you've got rows of just plants.
You may be able, you could get a small tractor in there if you needed to, or a BCS, which is sort of a walk-behind small tractor.
But the idea is that you don't need it.
But the idea is that you don't need it. And ideally, they're also sized so that the clients will be able to run chickens through at the end of the season as well. So they can move the chicken tractor and be fertilizing the soil in between. The chickens will scratch under and kind of do the work of tilling without the machine, which is the ideal scenario. But
so how big are these swales and why are they that big?
These are, so this is the first swale, the first contour swale in the system. They're sized according to the number of swales that we have. We're looking to infiltrate about 5 inches of rainwater before it ever has to go off-site or into the creek in this case, which is the downhill.
And you've said that the first couple of years you're going to need to irrigate this with an irrigation system, but then after it's established, that irrigation system just becomes sort of redundant. It's not needed anymore.
So there's 2 things that are happening. The swales themselves are connected to a rainwater harvesting system that's going on to the barn and also to the community house. So the overflow from that system goes into these swales and infiltrates stormwater. So, while it's raining, you're able to maximize and strategically place the water where you want it. So it's building the soil and building the soil moisture in the actual food forest, and then it overflows kind of like an ice cube tray, one pan to the next. On down the hill, it'll go into a pond that'll have ducks in the next phase, and then that will have effluent water that'll go into the lowest food forest. So there's that, and then the second bit of irrigation, it's actually a very redundant water system. So at this point in construction, before obviously the barn isn't finished, so there's no rainwater harvesting to be had off of the barn. So this particular season, we're going to be tying into the spring, and we put up a hydrant that has, I think, about 50 psi that's just gravity fed from the spring that we tapped in an earlier phase.
Yep.
So we'll be running temporary irrigation on a timer from that spring to establish
Several springs up there. You found a real good one with good flow, and that's going to be the potable. It's going to be backup to irrigation and backup to potable, which is a backup to other potable. It's just the redundancy's built in. So
yeah, and if you're going to have redundancy on any element of a site, water is the
water
one
is
you want.
definitely. Let's go take a look at the fence. This fence is mainly for wildlife, right?
Yeah, it's mainly for deer and for dogs.
Like that one.
And bear, things that like to get into your food and your berries.
Do you want to get into this someday? I don't know. These are locust posts, right?
Yeah, these are quarter round locust, locally harvested, which is a pioneer species. It's one of the first trees to come up in our deciduous hardwood forests around here. And it's also a pretty short-lived species. So once the forest grows up around it, they tend to die off. So it's really easy to find standing dead wood of locust, or locust that's kind of on its way out. And so these were harvested a couple of weeks ago, so they're pretty fresh. You can see still the variation in the inner wood here between the white and the yellow. They're about 8 feet tall, and then we'll put the steel mesh on the outside of the fence here. And locust is pretty amazing too, because untreated, it's a locally available, sustainably harvested, regionally appropriate material, and in the ground, untreated, it'll last 50 to 75 years.
Well, what's going in this food forest?
Got kind of iterations on a theme here when we get into the food forest. So this is going to be the first of maybe 4 or 5 areas that we're going to be working. This particular one has a lot of shorter semi-dwarf and dwarf varieties of fruit trees like apple and pear and cherry, and then we've got a mulberry, a species that can be coppiced, meaning it can be cut down to the ground every few years and managed more as a shrub. We chose these species specifically because in this forest we don't want them to get so high that they're going to block the solar panels. We have Aronia, some columns called chokeberry.
Wow. Apple trees, right?
We've got apples, we've got pears, we've got figs, we've got Nanking cherry, which is a shrub cherry. We've got tons of raspberries and blackberries, and muscadine, which are going to be trellised along the outsides of the food forest fence, or on the inside, but along the fence itself. Hardy kiwi. As we get down the hill a little bit and we've got some shade, we're going to be adding in pawpaw and hazelnut and cornelian cherry, a couple of other more shade-loving.
Little duck pond is going to be somewhere in here?
Yeah, it'll be right in here, probably right about where that shipping container is.
Great.
And we're going to tie in with some flow, it looks like, from the stormwater outlet.
Yep. So some of the stormwater will run into the duck pond.
Some of it just by sheet flow, and then we'll harvest some of it by contour swale. But we're really, we're kind of preempting the stormwater much ahead of the game by capturing all of the impervious surfaces, keeping a really dense vegetation. So that's going to reduce significantly the amount of stormwater, but because of regulations and such, it's sized for a 25-year event as if no rainwater harvesting were happening.
Let's go talk about this pile of crap over here.
All right. This is mushroom compost.
What does that mean?
It's hardwood that has been ground down and inoculated with mushrooms. I think they've added chicken manure, a bunch of other really good things. That's a locally available organic compost here. Yeah, a little stinky. It's really rich. It's still burning kind of hot. They'll mix in whatever type of manure is available. So horse and chicken manure. This is going down as soon as we finish leveling the swale, which I think is done.
Okay.
And putting the corner braces on the fence. So we can get the guys working on putting up the steel. Here's all the steel wire that's going. Red brand.
That's it. Woven field fence. Cool.
So
well, that's quite a forest. How long will it be before they start to get the fruits?
Well, we like to say first year roots, second year shoots, so the
Okay.
new growth,
Yeah.
third year fruits.
Great.